In a house in the countryside, geologist Abby is spending time with her older sister Beth. They've recently lost their mother, so they're trying to support each other emotionally to work through their grief. Tragedy strikes again when Beth is diagnosed with an advanced stage of leukemia. None of the doctors takes her case, as there's nothing they can do to help. However, Abby refuses to give up and learns of a foreign clinic that provides less ethical treatments. To pay for sending Beth there, Abby has to take a very risky job. Sometime later, Abby arrives at the Georgian Caucasus, close to the border with Russia. She's been hired by a private metal mining company to look for uranium deposits. Her father disapproves of this, since he thinks Abby could have a much better career than being a company's dog, but she's too desperate to save her sister. She even asks for an advanced payment, but her boss can't pay her if she doesn't find something. Abby and her co-worker Sergei spend long hours searching for uranium, to no avail. They are supposed to stay in the specified areas, however Abby decides to continue her search in the forest. Sergei disagrees and points out that it could be dangerous, so Abby takes his gun and tells him to leave without her. There are many creepy noises in the woods that make Abby a little nervous at first. Eventually she calms down when she finds a very strange piece of black rock. Back at headquarters, Abby runs a bunch of tests and notices that the rock's temperature is very high, but she's still unable to identify it. Her excitement over this discovery is interrupted by a call from her dad, who informs her that he's pulling Beth out of the clinic and bringing her home to let her die in peace among loved ones. She's against the idea, so she tells him that she'll go home to take care of everything. At that moment, the building shakes and the lights flicker. Once it passes, Abby packs up and asks Sergei to drive her to the airport. She gets on a helicopter to go home and chats with the pilots, who tell her they'll fly near the border just to remind the Russians who the valley belongs to. After a few hours of flying, Abby is shocked to see birds at this altitude. However, when the helicopter changes its course, she realizes the shape outside. It's not birds. It's a mysterious black shadow that makes a crackling noise. Pilot says it's getting closer before the helicopter starts shaking, and the black surrounds the windows before it flies away. Then the chopper's systems go down, including the radio. They should land immediately, but the engine stops working as well. Abby puts on her seatbelt as the helicopter loses speed and altitude, making it hard to breathe. She concentrates on her breathing and thinks about her sister, closing her eyes to avoid seeing the helicopter crash right in the mountains. While unconscious, Abby dreams of telling her father not to do anything drastic while she's gone and promising to be back soon. Eventually, she wakes up bleeding inside the wreckage and notices that part of the chopper is on fire. To make matters worse, one of the pilots is dead. Abby checks on the other guy and bandages his injury, telling him to apply pressure. Then she goes outside to yell for help, to no avail. When she returns to the helicopter, the pilot tells her how to use the emergency radio, but no matter how many times she tries, nobody picks up her call. Then Abby checks a map and calculates that the closest road is 60,000 kilometers to the south. She decides to break a bunch of boxes and start a big fire, hoping someone will see it from a distance. The next morning, Abby discovers the second pilot has also died. She has a panic attack and cries as she realizes she is trapped alone in the wilderness. Later, while trying to sleep inside the chopper, she dreams about Beth and her weak health, which wakes her back up. She goes outside to get warm by the flames, but her fire has gone out. Refusing to give up, Abby gathers every useful item she can find in the helicopter, including a gun and a flare. Once she's covered her body in enough layers of clothes, she follows a compass to try to find the south road. As soon as she walks away from the helicopter, she hears the sound of radio static. She immediately runs back, but nothing on the chopper is working. When she hears the static again, she realizes it comes from a radio on the pilot's belt. Unfortunately, it runs out of battery when she tries to use it, so she grabs the helicopter manual to learn where all the cables and chargers are. She leaves the radio charging, and while she waits, she keeps staring at her mysterious rock. Eventually, the radio works again, and Abby makes contact with an American pilot named John, whose aircraft also crashed in the area. His legs are trapped and he can't move. Also, his antenna is broken. Abby knows she can fix the antenna to call for help and asks where he is, so John explains that he can see a lake. After finding it on the map, Abby starts a new journey to find him. John keeps asking her not to do it, because this is dangerous occupied territory, but she ignores him. While she walks, John chats with her and asks her about her job. She's in the middle of climbing a hill when she explains that the money is for her sister, so she has to stop and rest to put her emotions together. After John mentions the rare 1 in a million chance, Abby gets enough hope to keep her going. As she continues to climb, she thinks about the time Beth tried to tell her that there was nothing to fight for and how she should move on. Abby tells John that nobody is fighting for Beth, and John thinks she's lucky to have such a supportive sister. Eventually, Abby finds a spot so high that she can't climb anymore, which means she has to go all the way around. As she changes direction, she doesn't see the black rocks nearby. In the new area, Abby does manage to climb over the hill and enters the forest, where she'll be resting for the night. John tells her he isn't in pain anymore because he can't feel his lower half. Abby starts a fire and makes a shelter with some sticks to sleep. Sadly, it starts raining, which puts out her fire. However, Abby feels something warm moving in her back and remembers the rock. She takes it out and touches it with her bare hand, noticing the surface reacting in a curious way. John tells her she shouldn't be ashamed of her work, and Abby realizes he's in the military, so he's talking from experience. In the morning, Abby continues her journey and reaches a valley covered in snow. The wind is making her even colder and she keeps tripping. When Abby finds a river, she stops to rest and refill her water bottle. A few hours later, Abby discovers that she's surrounded by another mountain range. The map doesn't show any better routes, so she has to start going up. She walks as much as possible, and eventually she has to try climbing only to fall immediately. John tells her to go back because she can't save everyone, causing Abby to go on a rant. She's tired of everyone telling her to stop trying. What she needs right now is reassurance and words of encouragement. A reluctant John says it's her choice and wishes her good luck. Next, Abby takes off her gloves and starts climbing again. Now she can hold on better and actually make progress. She keeps going for a while until she finds an area with nowhere for her foot to grip. When she informs John of this, he says it's a shame because she was one of his favorites and hangs up. A confused Abby tries to contact him again to no avail. Afterward, Abby takes out a tool and inserts it into the rock, but it falls when she steps on it. She takes a moment to take deep breaths and think, which helps her remember the mysterious rock. Her mind also remembers the time the doctor told her there isn't such a thing as miracles. However, one is happening right now, because moving her hand is enough to make the rock change shape. After tying some thread to the rock, Abby sticks it in the mountain wall and uses it as leverage so she can safely step on it and finally climb the final area to reach the top. The thread pulls at the rock as she stands up, bringing it back. That moment she sees the mysterious shadow fly through the sky while making a crackling sound. Abby takes out a pair of binoculars and notices some lights in the distance which belong to a military base. She gathers sticks and grass to start a big fire, hoping it may get someone's attention. She also makes an arrow out of rocks to indicate the direction she's taking as she leaves. A few hours later, John contacts her on the radio, saying she has to stop drawing attention to herself. He reminds her that the Russians control this area, so if they see her signal, they'll go out to kill her, not to help her. This makes her so nervous that she slips down a rock-covered hill and hurts her leg. Tired of John scolding her, Abby turns off the radio and takes care of the wound. At that moment, she hears some radio static and notices a soldier patrolling the area, so she immediately runs away. Between her injury and the snow, it's very difficult to walk and she has to use a stick for support. After crossing the forest, she finds some old abandoned buildings and decides to go inside to both rest and hide. There are lots of destroyed objects and even pictures left behind by families murdered during the Russian invasion. After checking every room and every drawer, she finds some things to start a fire and even some moldy bread that makes her gag. With the first aid kit from the plane, she bandages her hands and injects expired medicine into her belly. Before falling asleep, she looks at Beth's picture and thinks about how much pain she must be in. That night, Abby dreams of her happy days with Beth, but also of her at the hospital. Beth was tired of the clinic and wanted to go home to spend her last days with her family, yet Abby forced her to stay. Before Abby left for her new job, Beth pointed out that she wasn't doing this for her. Abby was doing it for herself. The next morning, Abby wakes up when she hears a radio. She looks outside and notices the soldier coming closer, causing her to panic. She rushes to block the door and hides under the window while covering her mouth. The soldier takes a quick peek, but luckily doesn't see her and moves along. While the man is checking the other windows, Abby carefully reaches for her bag using the stick and takes out the gun, only for the magazine to fall out. The noise gets the soldier's attention, and he tries to open the door to no avail. While he looks for another entrance, Abby gets the gun ready. Soon the soldier finds her and points his weapon at her, saying something in Russian. Abby panics again and opens fire. The bullet hits his gun and then his leg, bringing him down. Then Abby takes the guy's weapon and backpack while he keeps repeating the name Ivan. She puts the gun down to prove she means no harm and opens the bag to find a flashlight, cigarettes, and a black rock just like hers. At that moment, John's voice comes out of the soldier's radio saying, "You were one of my favorites," and the soldier confirms that's Ivan. Abby freaks out and she realizes they were both tricked, and the voice asks, "Don't you want to see Beth again?" before the communication ends. Afterward, Abby apologizes to the soldier and bandages his leg before putting him on the couch. She tells him that she'll go looking for the voice on the radio and that she needs him to ask his superiors at the base not to shoot her if they see her in the area, but she isn't sure how much the soldier understands her. The duo leaves together and keeps stumbling as they cross the forest because of their leg injuries. When they stop to rest, Abby takes out the rock and hears the crackling in the sky. It makes her realize that the rock attracted the shadow, which brought down the chopper and has been messing with radio transmissions. That's why the one in the helicopter worked again. After she walked off, furious, Abby throws the rock away and screams in frustration. Then the duo starts crossing a valley covered in snow. As their feet move the snow away with every step, they realize they're walking on ice, and this is the lake. Abby keeps a good distance from the soldier, not wanting to put too much weight on the same spot. That could cause the ice to crack. Suddenly, she hears the crackling noise, and when she turns around, she discovers that the guy has disappeared. Abby looks around for him only for the ice to break under her feet, and she falls into the hole. Luckily, she manages to hold on to the surface, and after lots of struggle, she climbs out. The wind starts blowing harder, and soon Abby loses visibility. She yells for help but never stops moving. Eventually, she finds the edge of the forest and the cigarette that the soldier left behind. Too tired to do more, Abby removes the wet clothes and gets inside a sleeping bag, hoping to get her body warm again. At that moment, John's voice reappears on the radio, saying that the same happened to him some time ago. An angry Abby throws the radio away, but she can still hear John's voice sharing a story. After his plane crashed, John had to watch his crew die one by one. His heart slowed down, and he thought it was over for him too, but at the last second he found deliverance. Abby falls asleep and dreams of her happy days with Beth again. She wakes up when she hears a helicopter, so she runs through the forest as she tries to get their attention. However, they can't see or hear her and the chopper leaves. The cold is starting to affect Abby deeply, and she falls to her knees while hearing Beth telling her to go home. She passes out and falls through a hole that turns out to be a cave. Abby's body rolls down on hard rock and lands in a small pool. Floating next to her, it's John's rotting body covered with chunks of the mysterious black rock. The bottom of the pool also has this black substance, which floats up to try to enter Abby's body. It seems this rock is some kind of identity that has been using real people's voices to lure Abby and the soldier the same way it caught John 65 years ago. When Abby wakes up, she's sitting on arid ground. As rocks float around her, the entity uses John's voice to congratulate her for making it, saying it had been afraid she'd end up like the others. Abby accuses it of causing the crashes on purpose and wants to know why it lured her here. But the entity says all decisions that brought her here were her own. As the floating rocks form half a human body, the voice explains that John agreed to become the entity's occupant to survive, and Abby's being offered the same privilege. Abby tries to walk away from the floating rocks, turning down the offer and saying she just wants to go home. The voice replies that she's already home. As Beth's house appears behind her, an invisible force pushes her inside, and she discovers there are piles of black rocks everywhere. The entity tells her she's afraid of death and desperate to beat it, which she can do if she surrenders to it. Abby goes from room to room trying to escape the voice and is shocked to find Beth outside. She immediately goes out and Beth holds her hand. Suddenly, Abby wakes up in her sister's home and is shocked to find Beth perfectly healthy. While the crackling is heard in the background, Abby hugs Beth and cries. However, she has a vision of the hospital and realizes this is all an illusion from the entity. She comes to terms with the fact that she has to let her sister go, so Abby apologizes to Beth for pushing her beyond her limits and says her final goodbye. When Abby is about to leave the house, the radio with the entity's voice tries to convince her to stay, since this is everything she wants. Abby denies it, explaining she's learned her lesson. Without death, there's no life. Beth also begs her not to leave. However, Abby opens the door and goes out to the snowstorm, screaming for help. At that moment, Abby wakes up in the sleeping bag, and she remembers she has a flare. She quickly lights it up, and the helicopter comes back to rescue her. For the next 2 days, Abby stays in the hospital recovering. When she finally wakes up, she's in an apartment with Sergei and his grandmother. He thinks she should rest, but she wants to go home, so he drives her to the airport. Sometime later, Abby and her father visit Beth at her home, where she's taken care of by a nurse. Beth doesn't have much time left, so Abby and her father go outside to have a breakdown without upsetting. Later in the evening, the nurse announces it's time. Abby and her dad sit on the bed with Beth and comfort her. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.